we can't tell our kids what to do, but we can be in charge of what we do and make ourselves the kind of person they would like to visit with, or they would like their children to spend time with.
I think that's well said. And yeah, I think it acknowledges how much the family life has changed, that today nothing compels an adult children to have a relationship with a parent beyond that adult child wanting to. So it gives the adult child much more power, and it diminishes the power of the parent. So to your point, the parent has to be able to speak to the adult child's complaints, take responsibility, try to heal the distance, try to see it from the adult child's perspective, and that kind of thing. So getting back to the closure concept, that one of the things that I like about the concept of radical acceptance is that it accepts that there's not closure. With radical acceptance, there's the idea that you can, that things are terrible, that you may not see your child again or your grandchildren again. You may just have to accept that. But to your point, life can still have meaning and value. And I think if we're so oriented towards closure, it can really direct us in down the wrong path. Whereas if we just accept that certain things are beyond our control, terrible things can happen to us. I know, Pauline, that you lost a husband recently, which I can't imagine the loss of somebody that you loved and been with for so many years. And it's not, what could possibly be the closure in that. So can you speak to that a little bit?
Well, I might sound like a grandmother now, but I think we jumped to closure way too soon, including the medical community, including the psychological professionals. I think it's very essential to work on a relationship rather than say you shouldn't see them anymore. Now, I would like to tell you right now that I'm not talking about abusive or incestuous relationships, okay? But I'm talking about all the others, and we're jumping way too fast to saying don't see them anymore. But our friend Stephanie Kuntz has written about the fact that historically, while families were units that stayed together whether you liked them or not, because it was survival, today we have a happiness idea. And frankly, I want to say, get over it. You know, you can be happy some days, but they won't always be happy. And yes, you will have connections with people you don't like. So I'm saying you don't need to like your family, but maintaining a connection, even if you stay in a hotel as opposed to in the house when you come back home, or if you just telephone, or if you just write or email or whatever it is, some minimum connection, or have lunch once a year with at least one person in the family that you are connected to. All of this, I think, is better than a complete closure, as if the family is dead to you. I think that's a coward's way out, by the way. And unfortunately is supported by some professionals. And I think rather you should do the work. And that way everybody grows from it. It's a win-win, both for the people who don't want to talk to you before this or yourself. It's a win-win. You may never be friends. You may never love them in the way that, Leave It to Beaver families looked like. But at least you will have a connection that took some maturity and some psychological work to someone that is less than perfect. By the way, that's true for life. Our bosses are less than perfect quite often. Our fellow workers are less than perfect. And by the way, if you're looking for the mate who is perfect, you'll probably never find one.
That's for sure. Yeah.
So I think our focus on happiness has gone overboard, and therefore has increased this culture of closure, this culture of cutoff, of saying, you no longer exist for me. It's very dangerous if we're going that direction.
No, I think that's beautifully said. We have this huge mental health crisis in our country. We have towering rates of loneliness and atomization and social isolation. And part of it is that everybody's kind of pursuing their own individual ideas of happiness. And to your point, my field of psychology and psychotherapy does in some ways enormous harm by supporting these ideas that the most important thing is your pursuit of your own individuality and happiness and self-growth. And if anybody or anything stands in the way, then you should just cut them off. And that's somehow an act of existential courage. And I think that's highly problematic. And it gets sort of linked to this idea of mental health, that today the pursuit of mental health is considered the most sort of, glamorous, positive, courageous thing to do. Well, I'm cutting out that person because they're bad for my mental health. Well, it may be that person you're cutting out, was a great grandmother or great grandfather, and your grandchildren adore that person, or you're basically ruining your parents' life in your pursuit of your mental health. And so, kind of to your point, Pauline, things don't have to be either or; they can be
Right.
both and.
Both and.
You can hate your parents and still love them or still find value in them,
Yes.
And so the idea of just cutting off and getting rid of people and in many ways ruining their lives, which is what so many of these estranged parents and grandparents feel, to me, that's sort of a moral problem in our culture.
I agree with you. And it may be related to our focus on the individual.
Yeah.
We, more than any other country in the world, focus on the individual. And I think that's a dangerous path if it becomes exclusive.
Yeah.
You need the both and. You need both to take care of yourself as an individual, but you also need to be part of a human system, or loneliness will become the biggest issue in our culture. And the bigger system is full of imperfections. And people who we don't really want to be friends with, but they're part of our bigger system.
Right.
I think psychotherapy has got to get off the individualistic dime and take into consideration the context in which people live, which is with other human beings. Very few of us are hermits. And right now, much of psychotherapy is being given as if the person is a hermit. And if you don't like what's around you, you just cut it off. I think that's very dangerous.
No, I agree. I think it's very problematic. And I think the way that you're contextualizing it in terms of family, we're not only part of a system of a family, we're also part of a system of a larger culture. And so this atomization that we're currently experiencing is just causing so much division and harm and depression and anxiety.
Right.
It's very problematic. Well,